Hello, everyone. Are you ready for our next installment of Paddle to the Sea? I would catch you up, but we've gone too far now. You'll have to go back and listen to all of the other recordings and see where Paddle is and how we got there yourself. That would be best anyways, because we're already on chapters 9 and 10. We are going to read Paddle crosses 2 borders, and Life in a Northern Marsh. That sounds like a place where he might get stuck again. What do you think? All right, here is our first picture. This is Paddle. There we go. Paddle crosses 2 borders. Looks like he's in a big bit of water. If you remember from last time, he definitely was. And I think this is a ship, or at least a very big boat. Let's find out. And you know what? I forget. Print's a little bit smaller than our other books that I read. Okay. Here's our picture again. Paddle crosses 2 borders. One night, Paddle passed the dim shapes of islands. Morning found him in wide Thunder Bay. Doesn't that sound like an exciting place? Thunder Bay. Big ships came near, churning the water into a froth of green and tossing Paddle over and over in their waves. That looks like this picture, doesn't it? See how green it is? A bumpy line of buildings stretched like castles along the horizon. They were the grain elevators of Port Arthur and Fort William, filled with mountains of grain, which trains had brought from the plains of Western Canada. The ships now passing Paddle would carry that grain to other lake ports and other lands to be made into bread and buns and breakfast foods for millions of people. That's a lot of grain. A breeze whipped out of the north, driving long waves before it. Driftwood followed the waves. A cedar stump came galloping at Paddle and hooked him between 2 limbs. Its roots stuck up in the air, making a sail which carried Paddle briskly on his way for days, until at last Paddle and the ferry boat were tossed onto a beach. Let's see, I'm going to show you, try to show you. There's a little illustration here of the stump with all of its roots and things, and there's poor little Paddle. Can you see him? Right here by my finger. Poor little Paddle caught. And now they're on a beach. That is not going to get him to the ocean, is it? Let's see what happens. Lost my place. They had crossed an international border. They are now not in Canada anymore, though there was nothing to show that they had crossed it. They had left Canada and entered the United States, and that's where we live. Canada is the country to the north of us. The cedar stump lodged in the sand, shaking Paddle free to ride up and down the beach in the foaming surf. He wasn't going out far enough to go back into the lake. He wasn't coming in far enough to get stuck on the sand. Along the beach was a mound of sand which kept the water of a marsh from running into Lake Superior. So there was a marsh, which is kind of like a swamp, and then there was sand, and then there was the lake. One long wave, however, heaved Paddle over the sand barrier and into a lagoon. That means that he is not in the lake anymore. Tangled forest Tangled forest formed the marsh's other borders. Lily pads lay on the surface, and Paddle's canoe landed on one of them. Oh no, no, it's not. He's there and he's on top of a lily pad. I wish they had drawn a picture of that for you. It was very quiet. Very still. The air smelled of mint and wintergreen and pine needles. Paddle had come to rest after 2 months of restless waves. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he was ready for a little break, do you think? Maybe he was ready to sit on a lily pad for a while. Let's look at this is where he was. That looks sort of chaotic and maybe a little frightening. Maybe he's happy to sit for a little while. Let's see our next picture. Excuse me. Oh, there we go. Drink water. Okay. And time for the next chapter. Here's the picture. It's very hard to see Paddle. I had to look really hard. Okay. Very hard to see. Tiny little brown here. This is the marsh where he is going to be stuck for a little bit. And there he is. Look at all the animals. All sorts of animals live in the marsh because there's water, and there's food, and there's protection. Life in a northern marsh. He might not be in northern country of Canada, but he's still in the northern part of the United States. Let's see. Life in a northern marsh. The marsh was alive. Didn't I just say that? Dragonflies and butterflies danced in the sun. Turtles lay in rows like buttons on old logs. And frogs, frightened by a stalking heron, leaped in all directions. The downy babies of wild ducks pecked eagerly at bugs. Woodpeckers, kingfishers, and ruffed grouse made their busy noises. A cow moose, which is a female moose, with her calf, splashed in the lagoon to drive off the flies. Oh, nope, there's no moose in our picture. But let's look at our picture with so much life in it again really quick. Near Paddle, a bull moose, now growing new antlers, was feeding on the roots and stems of water lilies. With his head far under the water, he jerked, the lily pad from under Paddle's canoe and set him free to be pushed about on the pond by the wind. Days passed. When it was sunny, squirrels chattered in the pines and chipmunks scolded from the high rocks. And there are, let's see, there's some squirrels. I know I saw. Nope, guess not. Just our one squirrel up there scolding away. They were silent, but they were silent, and the ducks moved to safety on the day that a mother bear and her twins came to romp in the water. There's our bear. You see her little babies? Yep. The cubs caught a crayfish and frogs in the mud, while the mother bear squatted on a rock beside the deep pool in the lagoon and smacked a black bass with the back of her paw. After this picnic, all three ripped open rotted stumps for grubs and beetles. It's good to be a bear. Do you know that song from Jungle Book? Paddle might have been caught Paddle might have been caught in the marsh for life. But one evening, no stars came out. Thunder crashed and lightning split the night with fire. A wet owl flapped madly for shelter in the forest. Ducks squawked and gathered their babies under mossy banks. A water-soaked muskrat waddled wetly into a hollow log and sat down with a very sour look. Rain made a thick curtain. Have you ever seen it rain so hard when you looked out you couldn't see through it? Like a curtain. The pond rose inch by inch by inch by inch. Part of the sandy mound along the brook gave way. That means water came up so much that it washed out that sandy bank. Torn lily plants, loose wood, and islands of watercress raced out into Lake Superior. And Paddle was again on his way to the sea. I was worried he was going to get stuck there. But rain that sometimes seems like a bad thing when there's too much of it can sometimes be a good thing for somebody else. Let's look at our picture one more time, because we're not going to see our marsh anymore because he's back out in the big Lake Superior. Let's see, preview. Our next two chapters are Paddle finds one end of Lake Superior. Remember, it's the biggest lake, so it's going to take him a long time to get from one end to the other. And our next story, or our chapter of that, is called A Fish Story. We'll have to see what we will see next time. Hopefully, if this is the first one of our paddle stories that you've dropped in on, you will go back and look at and listen to the rest of them. They are under a playlist called Paddle to the Sea, so you can find all of them there and get caught up and start listening every week. I hope you'll be back. See you next time. Bye-bye.